Hey YouTube, welcome to our channel, the ultimate guide to crack your technical interviews. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss a video. Today we have a new series. We're starting in talking about the system design fundamentals. Basically, we will create a series. I guess it will be from 10-12 videos that will talk about system design fundamentals, and after that we will try to go into actually real world system design interviews and how we approach to solve the problems. So let's start with it. So basically, um, we have a pretty straightforward for this one because we start with the fundamentals. Everything will be quite straightforward. So basically, we have um, one. Let's just make this bigger. Okay, no, delete. It will be design a single server set up. And basically, I guess there's not much things to ask about. Like it's a pretty straightforward question. However, when you got any question in system design, every time the questions become too vague. For example, design WhatsApp, design Facebook, design like blah blah blah, something like that. So all of the time that we need to get clarification to make sure that we to make sure that we are designing the right parts that our interviewer wants us to design. So for the example, basically design a single server setup. There's not much questions to ask basically because everything is. This is not a big question. However, we will find a way to ask basically. That just has a list. So basically, I will start first with one question. Do we expect a client and a server architecture? Let's call it architecture. And wait a minute. And of course, I am using architecture. Okay, I'll just type arc. Okay, and of course, we expect the architecture, and like there is like the question that I'm asking is quite silly, but we're just trying to put ourselves into the framework, so each time it will be like a second nature of ourselves when we are into a system design interview. So basically, the interviewer will say, yeah, like let's just give it another color. Let's give it red. The interviewer will say, yes, like it's of course, yeah. So we will ask another question. Of course, there is no one, so I'm trying to act as an interviewee and the interviewer based on my experience on attending a lot of different types of software interviews, software system design interviews. So I'm saying, will the client support mobile and web? Will the client include mobile and web? And of course it will include mobile and web, but we all the time we want to ask, and we don't want to assume anything. Okay, yes. Okay, so I will say, okay, we are designing that. We have a mobile. Okay, I will say that there's something that I guess it will be the last question, that is the application available in the internet? Is the application available on the internet? And of course, our interviewer will say, yes. I know all of the questions look dumb, but because we are creating a quite we are talking about the fundamentals, so I guess all of the questions that we are quite to ask will be quite too basic, you know. But when we finish our fundamentals, we will try to get into a pretty into like a real world system design interview. So I will say, it's application available on the internet. I will say yes. So I will ask another question, and let's just. Uh-huh. I'll ask another question. I will say, is uh, will the a client use a domain name to access our app? And I guess it will be also the answer. It will be yes. So basically, we got all of the requirements that we will need right now. There is no functional requirements. There is no non-functional requirements. It's something pretty easy. It's pretty basic. Basically, we want to create a system that is a one server system. It's a pretty server system that the client could be mobile, could be web. It will connect with it, and it will connect with that to connect with the server by its domain. And yeah, maybe we'll use the HTTP protocol, something like that. But let's just start from the beginning, and let's create. No. Let's create our own web. It will be. So basically, we have, this is our own client. Our client could be so basically our client could be a mobile, and let's just make it this one bigger. Yeah, or our client could be a web, basically web server. No, just web browser. Web browser, and just make this in the middle. Just increase the font a little bit. Okay, and we have it, this one. And let's, when we have mobile and web browser. Okay, so basically we have, this is our client, because our client is from we finished our one of our requirements, that the client is a mobile and web browser. Okay, so we are saying that we expect a client and server architecture. So basically, let's add a text. This will be let's give it color. This will be a client. No. This will be a client. Let's give it up a pretty color. This will be the client, and let's just make it quite bigger. So let's just make it. So this is the client. Sorry. Okay, and let's have we want to have a client server architecture. So let's just has another one here. It will be web server, and let's just make this one quite bigger. Okay, and we have, okay, so we have our client is including mobile and web server, and we have a client server architecture. Let's just put put this one server client. Okay, so how we will handle the communication, how these two servers or how these two applications will communicate with each other. We said that will the client use domain name to access our app, or basically to access our, let's say to access our web server? And we said yes. Okay, so if we have something called the domain name, we are talking about something that, because we will use something called to if we want to access our web server based on the domain name, we'll use something called just, yeah, can we just go, yep, okay, we'll use something called a DNS, and let's just make it bigger, make it in the middle. Oh, it's so big. Okay, we are using something called a DNS, and basically a DNS stands for a domain name system, and it is a hierarchical decentralized naming system for computers, services, and any other resources that connected to the internet, or in private internet, basically, or private network. The primary function of the DNS is to translate our the user-friendly domain name. So basically, let's just create a text here, and I will say that let's just make this one in. So basically, if we have a domain name that called www.example.com, let's just increase it. So basically, the client will send its domain name to the DNS, and the main goal of the DNS is to translate this user-friendly DNS into a machine readable IP address. For example, let's just for example, let's just add text. It will be, let's call it, the IP address will be like 192.0.2.1. So basically, the computers uses basically this IP address. The computers uses it to identify each other onto the network. In otherwise, basically, DNS allow users to access websites and other online resources by typing a memorable domain name rather than a numerical IP address, because it's, let's talk about it, it's way more easier to type www.facebook.com instead of to put the IP address of Facebook, because it's hard to remember everything, but it's easy to remember the domain name of your favorite websites. So we're saying that in the DNS, it gets the domain name and returns the IP address. And basically, the IP address stands for Internet Protocol Address. It is a numerical label that assigned to each device that it's connected to a computer network that uses the Internet Protocol for communication, basically. And an IP address basically identifies a unique device, such as a computer or smartphone, or like any other device, basically, and it helps basically to handle the communications with each other device. So basically, the device is a unique ID. You can think about the IP address. It's like a unique ID for each machine. Okay. And basically, right now we got our IP address, and the IP address, as we said, it's a unique ID for each machine that we could use it to communicate with each, the machines use it to communicate with each other. So basically, let's just and say that. So basically, the client will connect with the. Can I duplicate it? Duplicate. I don't know. Oh, okay. It's just quite straightforward. So basically, the client will connect with the server by its IP address, and the server will send back the response. Let's say that will send maybe the response. It will be like maybe like it will send like web pages or data or something like that to the actual client. And by we did it like that, we didn't talk about basically how they connect, like how this process works basically. And basically what we said that okay, before we're going to the connections, let's just see what's happening. First, the user accesses the websites through the domain name. Basically, the client accesses the websites through domain name such as, like, let's say www.example.com. Usually the DNS, basically DNS, it's most of the time it's a paid service, and it's provided by third parties applications. So basically it's not hosted in our server, so we don't have to care about how DNS works. And actually the DNS returns for us internet protocol address, IP address, and when it's returned, the browser when it's returned to the cloud, to the client, the client obtain something called HTTP, which stands for hypertext hypertext transfer protocol. It's basically we are using it through a hypertext transfer protocol. Basically, we are sending. Let's just create another one here. It will be request. So basically, so once the DNS sends back the IP address, the web browser make an HTTP request that using the hypertext transfer protocol to get something from to request the web pages or the users or the data that the client wants. So basically, the web server will return, like, for example, maybe like HTML web pages, or maybe maybe JSON array. Maybe like, let's just put this also because it's a good. Maybe sorry. Maybe JSON array, JSON data, for example, JSON formatted data. And this is communication, or this architecture using the hypertext transfer protocol, and it is a protocol that governs the transfer of data over the World Wide Web. Basically, it is the foundation of data communication on the web, and it defines how clients requests the data or web pages, and how server responds to those requests. HTTP is a stateless protocol, basically, so, which means that each request is independent and each request is unrelated to other previous or future requests, when a client requests a page, it sends an HTTP request to the server, and the server responds with HTTP response with the included data that the client wants, or maybe or the reasons why maybe the client sent something wrong to the actual server, so it will send them a response, HTTP response with why this request wasn't fulfilled. And basically, let's go to the last thing, which is let's talk about that how we handle the traffic resource. Basically, the web application which are using maybe like in the client, maybe like we have a mobile and we have a browser, and maybe maybe the mobile and browser try to access the web browser by HTTP, and we return HTML web pages. Maybe we return a JSON data, for example. Maybe like we return like users by ID, something like that. And I guess this is it for this problem. And actually it's a quite straightforward design. It's a pretty straightforward, it's pretty easy, but it's a good way to start. Just start to one by one try to understand how we will deal in system design, basically. And maybe the next video or next episode, we will talk about the database and how we will handle database, and how could we handle a lot of different data at the same time. And yeah, that's it for today's video, and see you in next videos.